Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for signing in on time. So this is our fourth episode of COVID-19 Veterinarian's Perspective. I see two, well, I know them, two from the academe, Dr. Daniel Ventura and Dr. Vera Matawaran. Thank you for joining us again tonight. But before we start, I just would like to give some guidelines um, to all the participants. You will only be in listen mode until the end of the presentation, and you can send in your questions via the chat box and privately to me. And then the session will be recorded as in the other sessions that we've had, and we will provide you a copy after this session. So once again, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterinarians and colleagues, I'm Lina Policarpio, currently the president of the UP Societas Mulierum Alumni Association, and welcome once again to the fourth episode of this webinar series called COVID-19 Veterinarian's Perspective. This was conceptualized and powered by the UP Society of Men and the UP Societas Mulierum with the main objective of providing fellow veterinarians and friends in the industries relevant information about COVID-19 and how it impacts our profession and how we can effectively adapt to the new normal. So in our first episode, Dr. Mundita Lim covered COVID-19 biodiversity in crisis, and she reminded us of our critical role as veterinarians in ensuring that One Health is being practiced in disease control, just like during this pandemic. And then on our second episode, Dr. Raymond De Villa, who is based in California, shared with us the various changes they implemented in their practice to adapt or to ensure that they are able to adapt to the new normal, so to speak. And then last week, Dr. J.M. Andaya tackled how to adapt veterinary pharmaceutical distributors coping with the coronavirus pandemic. And now this week, on our fourth and final episode for this season, so merong season 1, hopefully may season 2 tayo. Actually, we are lining up several topics for the next season. We have a colleague who is currently based in South Korea. She graduated from the UPCVM, from UPCVM rather, 5 years ago, and she received the Soilo M. Lapus Award for Best Undergraduate Thesis in Zootechnics. She earned her master's degree from the Gyeongsang National University and is currently pursuing her PhD from the same university. She was awarded as one of the best speakers at the Korean Society of Poultry Science Conference, not once, but twice. And recently, she was a recipient of the Gyeongsang National University's Pioneer Research Award. So maaga pa lang, she's already gathering feathers on her cap, so to speak. So tonight, our speaker will share with us how South Korea successfully addressed the spread of COVID-19, and likewise, she will impart her insights on the importance of veterinary research amidst a pandemic of zoonotic origin. So, to tackle lessons from South Korea's COVID-19 response and the implications of SARS-CoV-2 on veterinary research, let us all welcome Dr. Paula Leona Cammayo. Dr. Cammayo?
Hello. Hi, Lina. Doc Lina, thank you for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Okay. 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 Okay, so tonight I'll be having a two-part discussion. First part will be about the experiences we're having here in South Korea during Corona, and the second part would be about the importance of veterinary research. So I guess a lot of people have been curious on how South Korea was able to flatten the curve despite being one of the countries with the highest initial outbreak outside of China. And actually, their key strategy to attain that is to the three T's. This is the test, trace, and treat or isolate. So this strategy was introduced by the World Health Organization. So let's start with test. So South Korea has been doing expanded testing ever since its first detected case. And what happened was the government, after the genetic sequence for SARS-CoV-2 was released in January 12th, the government asks the companies to produce RT-PCR reagents for this for COVID, and it took them just 3 weeks. So by Feb 4, they were already using these reagents that they have produced. For South Korea's testing capacity, it is composed of 118 um, authorized organizations, and this includes the KCDC, or the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, institution equivalent in Korea, and then other institutes and laboratories. And with that, they are able to conduct about 15,000 to 20,000 tests a day. And for those who are wondering how's this fast upscaling of testing capacity possible, it is through the emergency use of authorization, or the EUA, which is granted by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety. And it started back in 2016 after they have learned their experience when MERS-CoV hit them in 2015. So instead of the regular 80 days, for a diagnostic reagent or product to get approved, it is reduced to 1 to 3 weeks. So this EUA is only granted when there's an emergency threat to the public health. Okay, so South Korea also has over 630 plus health centers, which they use as screening stations. And for those individuals who are having respiratory signs or fever, they may contact the hotline 1339 to get information of the nearest screening station to them. Also, they may refer to applications like Kakao Map or Team Map to get directions. So, of course, once they reach the screening stations, the specimens collected would either be the nasopharyngeal swab or the oropharyngeal swab, which will then be sent to the laboratories. So for the types of screening station, we have here the triage room. In triage room, this one is usually located in front of the hospital. It could be a tent or a booth, wherein the health workers would screen the people if ever there's a need for them to actually enter the hospital. So the interview to sample collection takes about 30 minutes, and then the person who got tested may go home, do self-isolation, and they will receive their results after 6 to 7 hours. So in this picture, as shown here, the health workers and the patients being screened are separated. And also, after the patient has finished their turn, these booths are disinfected before the next patient can come in. Okay, so they also have the walk-through testing site. And for these ones, they are strategically located in airport or near the bus stations. And they aim to screen people who are coming in from one province or city to another. So just similar to the triage room, testing or getting a sample also takes about 30 minutes, and then the person gets their result after 6 to 7 hours. Okay. So they also have this drive-through testing site. This is interesting because it minimizes the exposure of the health workers contact with the patients who wants to get tested in comparison with the walk-through testing site, and also it gives the convenience to the people who want to get tested, who they don't have the need to get out of their cars. So here, instead of the regular 30 minutes, the interview, sample collection, and disinfection is cut short to 10 minutes instead. And also, the health workers changes their PPE ever so often. Okay. So the usual test done for detection, there are two. It's either through RT-PCR or through rapid test kits. And the difference between the two is with RT-PCR, it aims to detect the antigen. So we're detecting after the RNA of the viral RNA of COVID, and then because it's highly sensitive, it's the standard test done for COVID detection. On the other hand, we have here the rapid test kits. For the rapid test kits, it detects the antibody for COVID. So I think everyone is familiar with rapid test kits. With one line, it's negative. With two or three lines, it means it's positive. The only limitation, though, with rapid test kit is that if a person just is starting its infection, then they may not have developed enough antibody titer yet that it might result to a false negative. Okay, so next part is the trace. Okay, so Korea has interesting ways of contact tracing of people. So their methods of tracing would either be through mobile GPS and car GPS. There are also a lot of CCTVs in almost every corner and in buildings, and also through credit card transactions. Actually, here in Korea, we seldom use physical cash in doing our transactions. So when we commute in buses, in trains, or when we do our grocery, we would pay via our cards. And we also get notifications afterwards about aside from the transaction you made, the time and the location of where the transaction took place. So although it oversteps the privacy of people, there's a revised law here in Korea wherein the government may access the GPS or the private information like the mobile GPS or even the credit card transactions, even without a warrant, to help in confirming the location or the whereabouts of a person who has tested positive for corona. And this is to make the disease surveillance also more efficient. And actually, we also get notifications whenever there's a person nearby our areas who got infected, who tested positive for COVID. We get notifications, and this is to encourage people to have themselves checked also. Okay. So as an example of how efficient their contact tracing has been, okay, so initially the cases for COVID here in Korea is just low up until the presence of patient 31. So apparently, patient 31 had contact with about 1,000 and plus people. And as you can see here on her timeline, she attended the church, and when she had a fever, she was advised to have herself checked, but she actually declined. She didn't get tested, but instead went to a buffet, even attended the church again, and when her symptoms got worse, that's the only time that she decided to have herself checked. So at that amount of time, she has been in contact with 1,000 plus people. And actually, she's a part of this Shincheonji Church. It's a cult like church in Korea, located in Daegu. And although it's located in Daegu, there will be other people also coming from other provinces who visit this gathering. And the 9,000 people had themselves tested for COVID, and about 5,000 of those people were actually infected with COVID. So other methods of tracing for social entry procedures, we have this health questionnaire. For those people who have been here already in Korea, I think you're already familiar with this health questionnaire. We have to answer, we have to declare here if we had any of the following symptoms like diarrhea, fever, or cough within the past 21 days before entering Korea. And actually, this health questionnaire was already present even before COVID. I think after at the time they were having problems with MERS-CoV. And then they also have this self-diagnosis application. So for this self-diagnosis application, they have to input their location. For those people who arrive now, they have to put their location, and they have to update it every day with the symptoms, the development of the symptoms that they're having. Okay. And then, of course, we have the next part, treat or isolate. So South Korea has a lot of designated treatment centers depending on the severity of the case of the people. And there's actually a scoring for it, seen here in the picture. So they have the national designated isolation units and therapeutic living centers for those who have mild to moderate symptoms. And they reserve their specialty hospitals for those who are have uh, have more severe cases. And they also have safe hospitals. So for the safe hospitals, they separate the people having respiratory illness from patients who have uh, general patients. And they are screened in the triage room I have mentioned earlier. Okay. So again, going back to the self-diagnosis application. So once downloaded, the people, the individual have to state here the development of their symptoms for 14 days. And just in case the individual doesn't comply, if they do not install the application or it's unupdated, operators will call them to have a follow-up, ask them about how they are feeling, if there's any development of the symptoms. So they actually also do telephone monitoring. Okay, so the other measures taken aside from the 3Ts, they also had social behavioral interventions. So there wasn't any lockdown imposed here really, but I've noticed ever since there was an increase in case in Daegu before, there were less people going outside. So people would opt to eat at home instead. And the classes were also done online. And for mass also, they were done online. People were really observing social distancing. And also there's this emphasis on hygiene. They would have these posters made by the Ministry of Health and Welfare posted in buildings. So it gives reminders to everyone or the general public to wash their hands, cover their nose or when sneezing, and also with people having symptoms to use their own vehicles when they need to have themselves checked or when they go to the hospital. And there were also free masks given, and there's a schedule also for when can a person buy a mask depending on their birth date. And hand sanitizers, so they are placed they can be seen in almost every place. They can be found in front of the buildings, the elevators, and even public transportations. And disinfection was also done in buildings weekly. Okay, so with that, okay, South Korea was able to reach the peak of their curve by late February, wherein other countries, they were just starting to do their testing when they were pushed by the World Health Organization by mid-March. And yeah, and as of June 1, the cases here, this is from the Ministry of Health and Welfare. The test performed is about 9,000 plus with 11,000 confirmed cases and a positivity rate of just 1.3%. So it's low. Um, okay, so they have this report summary available online from the Ministry of Health and Welfare and also KCDC for those who are interested. And they made it available online also so that other countries who want to learn from it or benefit from it could have access. Okay, so I'll be moving on to the next part of the discussion. Okay, so the importance of veterinary research. By the way, just a quick introduction. This is the members of our laboratory here. I have my professor with me on the side, the one wearing glasses, and then we are two Filipino PhD students, and there's a Vietnamese MS student also. Okay. So for the responsibilities of a veterinary scientist, in line with protecting human health and well-being, would be to ensure food security and safety. So the veterinary scientist must ensure that the food or the animal products or byproducts like meat, milk, or egg are safe for human consumption. Also, protection of environment and ecosystem, disease surveillance, especially for the emerging infectious diseases, and then participate in public health related concerns. So again, that could translate to disease surveillance, and then conducting biomedical research, or probably assisting in the development of treatment for zoonotic and non-zoonotic diseases that are of public health concern. So the scope of veterinary research includes the prevention, control, diagnosis, and treatment of diseases on the basic biology, welfare, and care of animals. But it's not limited to just animals. It should also include human-animal interfaces, like the one mentioned here: food safety, wildlife, ecosystem health, zoonotic diseases, and public policy. So usually when we say veterinary research, there's a notion that it's limited to research on laboratory animals, but actually it should also encompass research on companion animals, on livestock, poultry, and even exotics. But the three fields of veterinary science would be comparative medicine, public health and food safety, and also animal health. Okay, so due to frequent human and animal interaction, there's actually a threat of in contracting these zoonotic diseases. So the usual ways of modes of transmission would either be through direct contact, especially for those people who are working directly with animals, like those working in the farm, in slaughterhouse, in the zoo, or where else? in the market, and indirect contact through exposed surfaces, vector-borne transmission in fleas, ticks, and even mosquitoes. And then there's foodborne transmission through contaminated meat, and waterborne transmission through feces contaminated water. Okay. So the importance of veterinary research in relation to public health has been highlighted the past 2 decades, considering that 60% of emerging infectious diseases reported globally are zoonotic. So these emerging infectious diseases usually have the potential to be a pandemic threat. So just a decade ago, back in 2009, the last pandemic that we had before Corona was the swine flu. And then there's also the avian influenza and SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV also, which are epidemic zoonotic diseases. If they're not controlled, they also have the potential to be a pandemic threat. And I guess another example of zoonotic disease that we veterinarians are familiar with would be rabies. Okay, so just an example of disease surveillance. So what we've been doing here in the laboratory before, we do even influenza diagnosis. So what happened is that after we receive samples from a certain area, we pull them into 5 samples per batch, and then we inoculate them in embryonated eggs. And after 3 to 5 days, we do hemagglutination assay. And at the same time, these pooled samples that we've filtered, we also do RNA extraction and do RT-PCR. So for those samples that have that turned out to be positive, we have to also test them individually. So again, we do RNA extraction and then RT-PCR, inoculate them in eggs also, and carry out HA assay to determine the virus titer. So this diagnosis, or we have to report this one within 24 hours. And if ever there's a positive samples, we also send them out for further subtyping. Okay, so how are zoonotic diseases controlled? So the obvious way would be through vaccinations. It's not just humans who get themselves vaccinated. Due to practical reasons also, animals may also get vaccinated, which is of course should be performed by a veterinarian. So a classic example would be rabies vaccination. Okay. So since we're on topic of vaccination, another role of veterinary scientists are to conduct research on drug or vaccine development, especially during the preclinical stage, because drug development is a very tedious process. Usually it takes about 6 to 7 years, or sometimes even more. And just an overview of what happens is that after a certain compound has been discovered for it and has a potential to be a drug, it undergoes preclinical stage. So in this preclinical stage, it undergoes in vitro testing. So the compound is tested in individual cells to check its biological activity, and then there will be several replications of that testing and also set. And after it passes that, next stage would be the animal testing. So for animal testing, it's also done, since sometimes the in vitro results would be different from the in vivo results. So in animal testing, they also check for the safety and efficiency of the compound, and they do check the biological activity, its side effects, potential side effect, if ever. And then after that, it undergoes several phases of clinical trials in increasing number of human test subjects until finally it gets approval. Okay, so um, for us veterinarians, since we have greater knowledge when it comes to the pathophysiology of the um, test subjects, especially during this preclinical stage, I think that is one of our um, possible roles when it comes to drug development. Okay, so on COVID-19, although the intermediate host hasn't been identified yet, its research on its genetic sequence suggests that it's of zoonotic source. So, based on research, it has about 89 to 96 nucleotide homology with the horseshoe bat and 85 to 92 nucleotide homology with Malayan pangolin. And also, there have been records of human to animal transmission, and like in ferrets, in tigers, in cats, and just recently also in minks. So just how far are we from vaccine, from getting a cure or vaccine? So currently there are a lot of countries working on the development of this drug or vaccine for corona. And actually, there are 3 drug candidates under the Solidarity Trial arranged by the World Health Organization. This would be the lopinavir-ritonavir drug combination, and then there's also the remdesivir, and um, one also with the interferon beta, and there's another one before, but it was just recently removed from the list. It's the hydrochloroquine. It's removed just this late May because of the side effects. And as for the vaccines, one of the front runners would be the Moderna vaccine from US. And so far, it has promising results. And they have actually entered already the phase 2 of clinical trials. Another one would be here, one here from Korea. One company has used primates as animal models for their testing their vaccine, and it's about to enter phase 1 clinical trial. And what else? In Thailand also. So one company, they also tested their vaccine and it was found effective in laboratory rats, and they're about to test it in primates also. So with that, I think I wouldn't be surprised to know if there are actually veterinary scientists or researchers who are working on the treatment or vaccines for COVID-19. Okay. Okay, so I guess this is my last slide. Act as if you're infected already to protect yourself and others too. So at times that we're having a health crisis like this, I guess let's be considerate of our actions. And observe proper hygiene, wear mask if needed, and I think that's it. So I guess thank you for taking your time to listen. And again, thank you UP Societas Mulyarum and UP Society of Men for giving me this opportunity to share my insights and knowledge also. And for those who have some have questions or clarifications, feel free to do so.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dr. Cammayo, for that extensive sharing of your experience in Korea and also, sorry, okay. There are some questions that have been forwarded to me. We have Dr. Matawaran and Dr. Ventura. Please feel free to ask your questions as well. But I'll start with this first one. Wait, okay. Dr. Camayo, would you say that there was really, well, what was the secret of Korea really? Why they were able to address the problem immediately? What was the, how did they do it? I mean, on the ground, what was very evident? I think that's the question here.
Okay. I think the even from the start, the government has been very transparent about the cases that we're having here. And because of that, instead of causing panic, it made the people informed, so they're more cautious. So I guess that's one of the reasons why Korea was able to address Corona quickly.
Okay, so Koreans are used to wearing face masks even before the pandemics because there are countries that's really wearing face masks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Korea is
Usually
one of them.
during spring season, you have to wear mask because of the pollen.
Ah, okay, okay. So, walang problema sa pagpapasunod. Okay. Yeah, there's another question. Would you know what changes veterinarians made in their practice to adapt to the pandemic? I think because 2 weeks ago, Dr. De Villa mentioned about the changes they made in their practice. In Korea, would you know if there were such changes as well? So did you get did you hear the question?
Just no, no, no. What
Okay.
was the question?
The question was, would you know what changes vets made in their practice to adapt to the pandemic? Because what was that? 2 weeks ago, Dr. De Villa shared changes they made in the US. So would you know if there are changes that Korean vets also did in their part?
In terms for those people who are in the
In
small
the
animal
yes.
practice.
Kahit sa siguro
Um,
sa food animal, if you could share that as well.
Kasi I think generally life here in Korea hasn't really changed that much. Kasi even for us, we have to go to our lab pa din, and probably the same goes for those people. So
Okay, so
um, yeah, normal pa din.
okay. So walang unlike here and in other countries wherein extensive planning was made to ensure that we get back to work sort of with a sense of normalcy. So diyan, it was normal all throughout.
Yes. So ano lang, people were really observing pa rin yung social distancing.
Okay. Um, Another question is, what made people follow what the government mandated?
Sorry?
What made the Koreans now follow what the government mandated?
Okay. Kasi after learning from their experience in MERS-CoV, it hit them back in 2015. So uh, I guess after that, the KCDC also was able to construct guidelines that help the people to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question from Dr. Dave Fernandez. Would you know the sensitivity and specificity of the antibody tests used in Korea?
Sensitivity testing of rapid test kits.
Yes. The specificity and sensitivity.
Kasi here in Korea, not much about the technicality of the capacity and sensitivity of rapid test kits. But actually here in Korea, they still prefer to do RT-PCR testing over rapid test kit. Kasi, yun nga, for of course for the sensitivity of the RT-PCR test.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Fernandez, would you like a follow-up there or okay yung sagot ni Dr. Cammayo? Oh, there's another question from Dr. Red Cammayo. In dealing with your veterinary patients, do you wear PPE? If so, what level of PPE do you use?
Okay. Veterinary patients, so sa small animals siguro, no? I'm not so familiar with how the small animal practice is currently here in Korea, but I think they would wear the regular protective because even for us it's easy for us to get these PPEs and masks. I'm not sure though with the levels of PPE. But when it comes to testing siguro for COVID, at least there should be the biosafety level of the laboratories, which should be BSL-2.
Okay, thank you. Wait, I think there's another question from Dr. Danielle Ventura. Can you comment further on what you mentioned about the study of COVID transmitted to animals?
Okay. I think I've read some articles that there were cases that there was, instead of, aside from the human-to-human transmission for corona, there were also records of human-to-animal transmission. So this was evident. One would be from the tigers in Bronx, and also there were records for cats, and what else? Recently, the one from minks there were cases detected in minks from a mink farm. Yeah, I think I just read. Those are some of what I've read.
I think that was also covered by Dr. De Villa during his talk, although the animals were tested positive, but in terms of these animals transmitting the virus to humans, it was not possible, but it was not evident. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Any other questions?
Sorry, can I add to that? I just want to add also. So although there were cases of this human-to-animal transmission, yeah, there was no evidence that these animals who tested positive for corona also, they have low titer. I mean, they have low virulence of the virus. It's not enough to actually infect the humans.
Okay. Okay, so there's one question here. What's your plan after you finish your PhD? Are you coming back to the Philippines? You may or you may not answer that if you're not comfortable.
I'm not so sure yet because I still have a long way to go before I finish my PhD. So I think mas magfo-focus muna ako dun sa tapusin ko muna yung PhD ko.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Cammayo. Any other questions from our audience? Dr. Matawaran? Kita-kita eh. Who else? All right. Okay, so if wala na pong questions from our participants, I'd like to thank Dr. Cammayo. Any final words from you before we say goodbye to our participants?
Okay, siguro. Siguro, as veterinarians, we have a heavy role when it comes to health crisis like this one. I guess we should put into heart and also into action the concept of One Health. So let's work and coordinate with our human doctors and also the government, because after all, we're all headed in the same direction of finding a cure. And on the meantime, while there are still active cases of ongoing local transmission, let's be compliant of what the government is asking us to do, and what else? Learn to adapt to the new normal, and just be safe, everyone. That's it.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that ends our fourth episode of COVID-19 Veterinarian's Perspective webinar series with the final episode from Dr. Cammayo, Lessons from South Korea's COVID-19 Response and Implication of SARS-CoV-2 on Veterinary Research. So thank you, Dr. Cammayo. Thank you, everyone. And to all our participants, thank you for joining. And we hope to see you in our future webinars. We are preparing for season 2, so watch out for it. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.